He threw her deep blue passport into the roaring fireplace, the gold foil melting into ash. "You exist only because I allow it," he whispered, thinking he had broken a helpless girl. He didn't know that burning her identity was exactly what she needed to destroy his entire empire. The air in the Amalfi Coast villa was thick with the scent of sea salt, expensive leather, and unspoken violence. Gabriel De Luca stood by the massive floor-to-ceiling windows, his silhouette sharp against the moonlight reflecting off the Tyrrhenian Sea. He was the undisputed head of the De Luca syndicate, a man whose whispered name commanded fear from the docks of Naples to the boardrooms of Wall Street. In the center of his sprawling, marble-floored study stood Serena. She was trembling. Her clothes, a modest beige trench coat and a simple white blouse, looked woefully out of place amidst the opulent Renaissance art and modern biometric security panels lining the walls. She clutched a small leather handbag to her chest, as if it were a shield against the predator circling her. $3 million, Serena." Gabriel's voice was a low, resonant baritone that sent a manufactured shiver down her spine. "That is what your brother stole from my casinos. $3 million of dirty money that requires washing, which he graciously decided to keep for himself." "I told you," Serena stammered, her voice cracking perfectly on the last syllable. "I don't know where Thomas is. I haven't spoken to him in years. I'm just an art restorer in Chicago. I don't have your money." Gabriel turned slowly, the heavy crystal tumbler of amber liquid in his hand, catching the firelight. He possessed a brutal, arresting beauty. High cheekbones, a sharp jawline, and eyes as cold and gray as a winter storm. He closed the distance between them with the silent, predatory grace of a man accustomed to taking whatever he desired. "I know you don't have my money," Gabriel said softly, reaching out to brush a stray lock of her honey-blonde hair behind her ear. She flinched, a reaction that brought a cruel, satisfied smile to his lips. "But Thomas values you, and until he returns what is mine, you are mine." He snapped his fingers. From the shadows, his hulking enforcer, Matteo, stepped forward, holding a small manila envelope. Gabriel took it and pulled out Serena's United States passport. "You see, Serena, the problem with the modern world is that it allows for the illusion of escape," Gabriel murmured. He walked over to the grand, roaring fireplace that dominated the eastern wall of the study. "No, please," Serena begged, taking a frantic step forward. "That's all I have. You can't just keep me here." "I can," Gabriel replied, his eyes locking onto hers as he tossed the little blue booklet directly into the flames. Serena let out a choked sob, falling to her knees on the Persian rug. She watched the fire consume her identity, the pages curling and blackening, the golden eagle turning to soot. Gabriel stood over her, feeling a rush of absolute dominance. He believed he was breaking a fragile bird, stripping away her wings so she would have no choice but to rely entirely on him. But as Serena stared into the flames, her tears masking her eyes, her internal monologue was chillingly silent. "Thank you, Gabriel," she thought. The woman crying on the floor was not Serena, a struggling art restorer from Chicago. She was Serena Harrington. Her father, Richard Harrington, was the founder and CEO of Aegis Global, a shadowy, multi-billion-dollar private intelligence and paramilitary organization. Aegis handled the geopolitical messes that the CIA and MI6 legally couldn't touch. Serena had been trained since childhood in psychological warfare, close-quarters combat, and deep-cover infiltration. Her brother, Thomas didn't exist. He was a fabricated phantom created by Aegis cyber specialists to bait Gabriel DeLuca. The DeLuca family was holding an encrypted ledger containing the names of corrupt U.S. officials, including Senator William Hayes, who were funneling state defense contracts to the Mafia. Aegis needed that ledger, and a direct assault on the heavily fortified Villa Rosa would have caused an international incident. The only way in was a Trojan horse. Serena had to be invited inside. She had to become something Gabriel DeLuca could not resist. A vulnerable, beautiful target. By burning her fake passport, Gabriel hadn't trapped her. He had officially erased the only physical piece of evidence that could have been scrutinized by his paranoid security team. He had sealed his own fate. "Pick her up," Gabriel commanded Matteo. "Put her in the East Wing. Give her whatever she wants. Clothes, food, books. But if she steps foot outside the perimeter, shoot her in the leg." Matteo hauled Serena to her feet. She kept her head bowed, playing the role of the defeated captive to perfection, allowing herself to be led away into the labyrinth of the DeLuca fortress. The game had officially begun. Over the next 3 weeks, Serena turned the east wing of the villa into her own personal observation deck. Gabriel DeLuca's fortress was an architectural marvel, blending ancient stone with state-of-the-art security. Through her terrified, tearful persona, she carefully mapped the property. She noted the patrol schedules of the armed guards, the blind spots of the thermal cameras, and the exact make of the biometric lock on Gabriel's private subterranean office, a military-grade Faraday cage where the ledger was undoubtedly kept. Gabriel, meanwhile, found himself increasingly obsessed with his captive. I was used to women who threw themselves at him for his power and wealth, or victims who entirely broke under his cruelty. Serena was different. She was compliant, yet there was a quiet, stubborn defiance in her eyes that fascinated him. She refused to wear the expensive designer gowns he bought her, opting instead for simple, unassuming clothes. She didn't cower when he entered the room. She simply watched him, guarded and alert. One evening, a violent thunderstorm rolled off the coast, plunging the villa into a moody, flickering darkness. Gabriel found Serena in the massive library, curled up on a leather sofa, reading by the light of a single candelabra. "Do you plan to ignore me forever?" Gabriel asked, pouring himself a drink and sitting across from her. "I didn't realize my captor required my sparkling conversation," Serena replied smoothly, not looking up from her book. Gabriel chuckled, a dark, rich sound. "You have a sharp tongue for someone entirely at my mercy." "Mercy implies you have a conscience, Gabriel. We both know you don't." She finally looked at him, her eyes wide and seemingly filled with a mixture of fear and tragic longing. He crossed the room, sitting beside her. The physical proximity was suffocating, thick with an undeniable, electric tension. He reached out, tracing the line of her jaw. Serena's heart rate remained perfectly steady, a testament to years of biofeedback training. But she forced a slight tremble into her breath, parting her lips just enough to signal vulnerability. Gabriel leaned in, his lips brushing against her ear. "You think you hate me, Serena. But out there, in the real world, you were nothing. Here, under my protection, you are untouchable. I can give you the world." Before she could deliver her carefully calculated response, the heavy oak doors of the library blew open. The tranquility of the storm was shattered by the deafening crack of automatic gunfire. The heavy glass of the library windows shattered inward as 3 men dressed in tactical black breached the room. The Costa family, Gabriel's most bitter rivals, had made their move. Gabriel's reflexes were fast. He tackled Serena to the ground just as a spray of bullets shredded the leather sofa where they had been sitting seconds before. He drew a sleek Beretta 92 FS from his shoulder holster, returning fire from behind the heavy mahogany desk. He dropped the first attacker with a clean shot to the chest, but the other 2 advanced, laying down suppressive fire. Gabriel grunted in pain as a bullet grazed his shoulder, his gun spinning out of his hand and skittering across the polished wooden floor. One of the Costa assassins rounded the desk, raising his rifle to execute the defenseless Mafia Boss. Serena had a split second to make a choice. If Gabriel died, her mission failed, and the ledger would fall into the hands of the Costas, who would undoubtedly sell it to the highest bidder. Dropping the terrified captive act for a fraction of a second, Serena lunged. She didn't just grab the man, she executed a flawless Krav Maga disarm. Her hands clamped onto the hot barrel of the rifle, redirecting it upward as she simultaneously delivered a devastating, bone-shattering kick to the assassin's knee. As the man buckled, she ripped the rifle from his grip and drove the heavy stock into his temple. He dropped like a stone. The third assassin hesitated, shocked by the sudden, violent counterattack from the seemingly fragile woman in a silk nightgown. That momentary hesitation was all Gabriel needed. He lunged forward, retrieving his Beretta and putting 2 bullets into the remaining attacker's head. Silence descended on the library, save for the howling wind outside and Gabriel's heavy breathing. Serena immediately dropped the rifle. She fell back against the bookcases, pulling her knees to her chest, and let out a piercing, hysterical scream. She began to hyperventilate, tears streaming down her face as she looked at the blood on her hands. Gabriel, bleeding from his shoulder, rushed over to her. He pulled her into a fierce, protective embrace, staining her nightgown with his blood. "Shh, shh, I've got you. You're safe," he whispered frantically, pressing her head to his chest. "You saved my life. How did you do that?" "I don't know," she sobbed against his shirt, her voice muffled and trembling. "I just panicked. My ex-boyfriend took self-defense classes. I just reacted. Please tell me he isn't dead." Gabriel stroked her hair, his eyes filled with a new, profound intensity. The suspicion that had flickered in his mind was instantly drowned out by a powerful, possessive gratitude. She hadn't run. She had fought for him. In the twisted, paranoid world of Gabriel De Luca, loyalty forged in blood was the only thing that mattered. "You are safe," Gabriel vowed, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "No one will ever hurt you. I swear on my life." Hours later, after the bodies were cleared, the perimeter secured, and Gabriel's wound stitched by his private doctor, the villa finally grew quiet. Serena was escorted back to her room in the East Wing, a guard now permanently stationed outside her door for her protection. She walked into her lavish bathroom, turning on the gold-plated faucets to let the water run loud. She stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her tear-streaked face slowly morphed into an expression of cold, calculating stone. Reaching beneath the false bottom of her leather handbag, the only possession Gabriel hadn't burned, she retrieved a small encrypted satellite communicator disguised as a compact mirror. She activated the biometric scanner with her thumbprint. A tiny green light blinked. "Aegis Command, this is Nightingale," Serena whispered into the device. her voice devoid of any trace of the terrified girl she had played all night. Phase 1 complete. The DeLuca asset is thoroughly compromised and emotionally dependent. He trusts me completely. I have eyes on the subterranean vault. Prepare for Phase 2. I am going to bleed his empire dry. The weeks following the Costa family's failed assassination attempt marked a profound shift in the power dynamics within Villa Rosa. Gabriel DeLuca, the untouchable phantom of the European underworld, had developed a fatal weakness. He believed he had found the one thing his billions could not buy: absolute, uncorrupted loyalty. He moved Serena from the isolated East Wing into the master suite. He draped her in haute couture, replacing her simple cotton blouses with custom silk from Milan, and clasping a staggering 50-carat diamond Riviere necklace around her throat. He believed he was dressing a queen. Serena knew he was simply polishing his favorite possession. "You look breathtaking," Gabriel murmured one evening, standing behind her as she sat at an ornate vanity. His hands rested heavily on her bare shoulders, his stormy grey eyes meeting hers in the reflection of the glass. "Tomorrow, I am hosting a gala. The heads of the 5 major families will be here. I want them to see the woman who stood by my side when the wolves came to the door." Serena lowered her eyes, projecting a perfect cocktail of modesty and lingering trauma. Are you sure it's safe, Gabriel? After what happened in the library, "The Costas are broken," Gabriel replied, his voice dripping with lethal arrogance. "And I have taken precautions. Matteo has doubled the perimeter guard, and I have secured the most vital assets of this syndicate where no one can ever touch them." He leaned closer, his breath hot against her neck. "I want to show you something, Serena. I want you to understand exactly how much power protects you now." Gabriel took her hand and led her out of the master suite. They bypassed the grand staircases and walked toward the heavily restricted north corridor. At the end of the hall stood a solid titanium door. Gabriel pressed his thumb to a biometric scanner, leaned down for an iris scan, and spoke a specific Italian phrase. "Il sangue è il patto." Blood is the pact. The heavy door hissed open, revealing a private elevator that descended deep into the bedrock beneath the Amalfi Coast. As the elevator glided downward, Serena's pulse remained at a steady, resting rate of 60 beats per minute. Her mind, however, was rapidly processing every detail: iris scan, thumbprint, voice recognition, subterranean descent time, 22 seconds. The doors opened to a state-of-the-art vault that looked more like a sterile laboratory than a mobster's hideout. It was a complete Faraday cage, lined with copper mesh to block all electronic signals. In the center of the room sat a massive desk holding a single, standalone server rack and an array of physical safe deposit boxes. "This is the heart of the DeLuca Empire," Gabriel stated, gesturing to the servers. "Every offshore account at Julius Baer in Zurich, every shell corporation in the Cayman Islands, every bribed official from Rome to Washington, D.C. It is all documented here." He walked over to a physical safe, spinning the mechanical dial with practiced ease. He withdrew a sleek black external hard drive, the ledger. "With this," Gabriel said, tapping the drive against his palm, "I control senators, judges, and generals. A man named Senator William Hayes believes he runs the U.S. Armed Services Committee. In reality, he works for me. As long as this drive remains in my possession, our enemies can never destroy us. We are untouchable." Serena looked at the drive, her eyes wide. It's brilliant, Gabriel. But what if someone steals it? Gabriel laughed, sliding the drive back into the safe and locking it. They would have to get through a small army, replicate my biometric signatures, and somehow bypass the Faraday cage to transmit anything. It is impossible. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a fierce, claiming passion. Serena kissed him back, letting her hands roam over his chest, sliding up to cup his face. As her thumb stroked his jawline, she pressed a nearly invisible, micro-thin polymer film against his right thumb, lifting a flawless copy of his fingerprint. "I feel so safe with you," she whispered against his lips. Later that night, while Gabriel slept soundly beside her, Serena slipped out of bed and entered the expansive master bathroom. She turned on the shower to mask any noise and retrieved her disguised satellite communicator. She quickly formulated her extraction checklist, mentally preparing for the climax of the mission. Objective 1. Clone Gabriel's biometric data. Completed using Aegis Smart Polymer. Objective 2. Synthesize voice command. Completed. She had recorded his voice for weeks, allowing Aegis AI to construct a perfect audio deepfake of his passcode. Objective 3. Bypass the Faraday cage. Requires physical hardline connection to the server during the gala. Objective 4. Drain the Julius Baer and Banca Pictet accounts. Objective 5. Extract the ledger and exfiltrate the compound. "Nightingale to command," Serena whispered into the device. "The board is set. Tomorrow night, during the gala, we initiate the checkmate. Have the extraction team holding at coordinates Alpha Tango. Do not engage until my signal." "Copy that, Nightingale," the voice of her father, Richard Harrington, crackled through the earpiece. "Bring it down, Serena. Bring it all down." The Villa Rosa was ablaze with light and dripping in excess. The ballroom was packed with ruthless men in bespoke tuxedos and women dripping in blood diamonds. Waiters circulated with trays of Cristal champagne, while a string quartet played Vivaldi in the corner. Serena stood by Gabriel's side, wearing a stunning, floor-length crimson gown that practically stopped traffic. She played the role of the devoted, adoring, captive-turned queen to absolute perfection. She smiled at the right moments, laughed at the crude jokes of the underbosses, and never let go of Gabriel's arm. Gabriel was intoxicated, not by the champagne, but by his own invincibility. He had defeated the Costas, secured his empire, and conquered the woman he desired. At 11:30 p.m., Serena leaned into him, brushing her lips against his ear. "It's so crowded in here, darling. I have a terrible headache. Do you mind if I go upstairs and rest for a little while?" Gabriel looked at her with genuine affection, kissing her forehead. "Of course, my love. Go rest. I will join you as soon as these vultures leave." She slipped away, moving through the opulent corridors with the practiced grace of a ghost. The moment she was out of sight, her posture completely changed. The fragile, submissive girl vanished, replaced by a highly lethal Aegis operative. She reached the titanium door of the north corridor. The lone guard stationed there barely had time to register her presence before she struck. A lightning-fast strike to his carotid artery sent him dropping to the marble floor, unconscious. She caught his heavy body, lowering him silently so his weapon wouldn't clatter against the stone. Serena stepped up to the biometric panel. She pressed the polymer film bearing Gabriel's thumbprint against the scanner. Beep. She held up her modified compact mirror, displaying a high-resolution, digitally mapped video of Gabriel's iris that Aegis Tech had spliced together from high-definition security footage. Beep. Finally, she pressed a button on her communicator, playing the AI-generated deepfake of Gabriel's voice. Il sangue e il patto. The heavy titanium door hissed open. Serena stepped into the elevator and rode it down into the subterranean vault. As soon as the doors opened, she moved with ruthless efficiency. She didn't need to break into the mechanical safe for the physical drive. She just needed the server. She pulled a specialized Aegis splicing cable from the lining of her crimson gown and connected it directly to the master server, routing it through her satellite communicator to bypass the Faraday cage's local network restrictions. A tiny holographic screen popped up from her device. Uplink established, initiating data transfer. Command, I am in the mainframe, Serena said. Commence total asset liquidation. Thousands of miles away, in an underground bunker in Virginia, Aegis cyber warfare specialists went to work. Within seconds, the vast, untraceable fortune of the DeLuca syndicate began to evaporate. Julius Baer. Offshore account, Zurich. $450 million zeroed. Cayman National Bank, Grand Cayman. $820 million zeroed. Banque Pictet Shell Corporations, Geneva. $1.2 billion zeroed. As the money vanished, Serena copied the contents of the ledger, every corrupt politician, every dirty judge, every black market weapons deal, onto her encrypted micro drive. She was at 98% completion when the heavy hiss of the elevator doors echoing through the vault made her freeze. Gabriel stepped out of the elevator. I didn't have his gun drawn, but his face was a mask of utter, catastrophic shock. He looked at the unconscious guard he had found upstairs, the open security logs on his phone, and finally, at the woman he loved standing in front of his compromised servers. Serena. His voice was barely a whisper, fracturing under the weight of the betrayal. What are you doing? Serena didn't panic. She calmly unplugged the splicing cable, slipped the microdrive into her dress, and turned to face him. The trembling, fearful girl was gone. Her eyes, usually wide with manufactured innocence, were now as cold and calculating as a predator assessing its prey. "Hello, Gabriel," she said, her voice dropping the frantic, breathless tone she had used for months, replacing it with a smooth, commanding authority. Gabriel stepped forward, his fists clenching, his mind violently rejecting what his eyes were seeing. "Who are you?" "The art restorer." "Thomas." "The money." "There is no Thomas." "There was no $3 million, Serena replied, her expression perfectly flat. "You wanted a weakness, so I gave you one. My name is Serena Harrington, and I work for Aegis Global." Gabriel's breath hitched. He knew the name Aegis. Everyone in the underworld knew them. They were the ghost stories that cartels and syndicates told each other in the dark. "You played me," he snarled, a terrifying, homicidal rage finally breaking through the shock. He reached for the Sig Sauer P-2026 at his hip, raising it to point directly at her chest. "I gave you everything. I protected you. I burned your passport to keep you safe." "You burned a piece of paper," Serena corrected calmly, not even flinching at the sight of the weapon. "You burned my passport, Gabriel. So I decided to burn your empire." "I will kill you," he roared, his finger tightening on the trigger. "No, you won't," Serena said, taking a slow, deliberate step toward him. "Because if I don't walk out of this vault, the dead man's switch I just activated We'll send the contents of your ledger to every major news outlet, the FBI and Interpol. But that's not the best part. She stopped a few feet away from the barrel of his gun. Did you really think the Costas breached your library on their own? Serena asked, a mocking smile playing on her lips. They had the security codes, Gabriel. They knew the patrol routes. They knew exactly where you would be sitting. Gabriel frowned, the gun trembling slightly in his hand. What are you talking about? Look at the ledger, Gabriel. Look at the recent encrypted communications log I left open on your monitor, she commanded softly. Gabriel didn't want to look away, but the seed of paranoia had been planted. He chanced a glance at the glowing monitor of the server rack. There, plain as day, were encrypted messages sent from an internal IP address to the Costa family. The sender's authorization code belonged to Matteo, his most trusted enforcer, his right hand. Matteo sold you out to the Costas, Serena explained smoothly. He wanted you dead so he could take over the syndicate. When that failed, I realized I didn't need to destroy your empire from the outside. You built a house of cards, Gabriel. I just opened the window. Gabriel stumbled back, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. His money was gone. His ledger was stolen. His right-hand man was a traitor. Everything he had built over 2 decades had been systematically dismantled in exactly 45 minutes. Why didn't you just kill me? Gabriel asked, his voice hollow, his gun lowering to his side as the sheer magnitude of his defeat crushed his spirit. Because death is too easy for a man like you, Serena replied, stepping past him toward the open elevator. You took pleasure in stripping people of their power, in making them helpless. Now you get to know exactly how that feels. You have no money, no leverage, and a syndicate full of traitors who will tear you apart by sunrise. She stepped into the elevator and turned to face him one last time. By the way, she added, her tone utterly ruthless, I hated the diamond necklace. The elevator doors hissed shut, leaving Gabriel De Luca alone in the silence of his impenetrable, empty vault. 10 minutes later, as chaos erupted in the ballroom upstairs. When the underbosses realized their accounts were frozen, Serena walked calmly out of the front gates of Villa Rosa. The night air was cool against her skin. A sleek black SUV pulled up onto the gravel driveway. Richard Harrington rolled down the back window, a proud smirk on his weathered face. Rough night at the gala, operative. Just another Tuesday, Director, Serena smiled, sliding into the back seat. Let's go home. Gabriel had thought he was the ultimate predator, capturing a helpless bird and putting her in a golden cage. He didn't realize until it was too late that he hadn't caught a bird at all. He had locked himself in a cage with a viper, and she had just swallowed the key. Wow, what an intense ending. If you loved this crazy tale of betrayal, revenge, and mafia drama, please hit that like button to support the channel. Don't forget to share this story with your friends who love a good plot twist, and subscribe for more thrilling original audio dramas every single week. Ring that notification bell so you never miss a drop. Who do you think was the smartest character? Let me know in the comments below. See you next time.